Okay, welcome to Five Questions with. My guest today is Amanda Fountain. Amanda works for March Communications in Boston. So, Amanda, welcome to the show. Excited to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to chat with you, David.
And so, for anybody that's not familiar with you or March, can you give me a little background on yourself and your company?
Sure. So my background has always been in social media, but I've been embedded in PR agencies for a long time. I started my career doing kind of a hybrid blend of media relations, and then social media kind of became a thing early on, and I just wanted to do it, so I started. I've worked across both B2B and B2C. So working in social, I've had more exposure to different types of things because social has to go across everything. And working across vertically, I found really fun and challenging. I particularly have spent a lot of time working in regulated spaces like healthcare, knowing like the FDA guidance was a fun challenge early on, and I've really enjoyed doing more of that because it was so new at the time, and now I know more because I jumped on it early. And then from the B2B side of things, I really have spent time figuring out how to go after really niche audiences, like the types of people that you don't get a lot of data or information about. Consumers, there's lots of information about consumers, so there's resources, but I like to work in the space where you have to make some guesses and you have to test things, which is what happens with B2B when you're looking for very segmented niche people. March Communications is a tech agency. We do mostly B2B, but also some B2C, like innovation in consumer spaces. But our core is that B2B space with an integrated approach. So we offer social media, content, and media relations, and works really well working all together. In particular, I work really closely with our content team because content and social need each other. It's kind of how that works. When you can add in that third piece of media relations and public relations, it really just gives you a really great program for whatever your business needs to do when you have to talk to customers and like be part of conversations.
Awesome. And so social media is sort of exploded since COVID-19. We've had Black Lives Matter. We have the Facebook protests that are going on at the moment. What are you seeing is sort of what's really driving social media at the moment? What are you seeing that's working today and that maybe wasn't, 4 or 5 months ago?
Sure. So social has always been a little bit of the Wild West. You never know what you're going to get there. Can change on a dime. But right now, it's more highly charged than usual, and for longer than it has been, right? So it started with COVID and then right into the Black Lives Matter, and now the broader conversation about, human rights, really. So there's a lot happening. And what I'm seeing with brands is a lot of them were able to maneuver through this. They started with adapting to being sensitive about COVID. That one seemed to be an easier jump for most companies and brands to figure out, right? Like health and wellness is a little bit easier. But when it came to Black Lives Matter, that's where I started seeing more companies just struggle to figure out their messaging, to figure out their footage or their footing. Because with COVID, you can say we're protecting our employees. It's a little bit more clear cut. And the response from people, like users on social, was less aggressive. It was less intense. The expectations were acknowledge that COVID's happening, but that was sort of it. But Black Lives Matter is different. People expect brands to take a side, to have a commitment. And that's what's happening, is that we're seeing brands really take a minute. Some brands are taking a minute to be thoughtful in their response and their approach and like really figure out their messaging before going out on social. Because if your messaging's bad, you're going to get a lot of people coming at you. If you respond too slow, though, also people are saying, where's your messaging? Where's your sand? The challenge that's really there, though, is that social is only one part of the conversation. So of the like billions of people on Earth, there's only a small percentage that are actually active on social media. So all those conversations are important to listen to and talk about. But it's not how you should build up your whole strategy. So like when it comes to like a messaging and content strategy, social can inform it, but it's only one part of it. So that's what I'm seeing is companies just trying to navigate through that part, is like what has to go on social versus what has to be our longer term messaging, like what matters for all of our audience, not just the vocal part that's on social right now.
So that's interesting, and that sort of leads into that next question that I have. That's because social is so important. It's sort of for a company to make that decision that says, when do I outsource or when do I use an agency for social media versus when should I do it in-house with the people that I have? And I would think that obviously social strategy plays a big role in it. But what are some of the other aspects or factors that you see about why you should hire a social media agency versus doing it in-house?
Yeah, I think the dividing line is really how much strategy you need to have and how much volume is happening in your world. And that volume can either be how much content you need to create, but also how much do you need to listen, right? So the bigger the company, the more risk you have of missing conversations about your brand or who you are if you don't have someone monitoring and listening all the time. So that's really when you should definitely have an agency partner. Where you can kind of get away with doing it all in-house and on your own is if you know that your audience is not really active on social, if it's kind of a tertiary platform because that's not where you want to talk to your audience, or you know they're not there. In that case, you can start small, right? You can have an in-house person just focused on disseminating messages because it's important to be visible, and you want to try to tap into new audience segments because your audiences are going to change over time as people kind of grow up into their careers.
Mm-hmm.
But if you know that your audience is less active on social, you can pull back. You can have more in-house resources. But it's when you get to that point where you know you need to listen, you know there's a bigger impact or risk of what people are saying or how they're talking about you, or even just you need to have that insight to be able to make different messaging decisions. That's when an agency partner works really well. I mean, the obvious best model is when you have an agency partner and someone in-house that's your social expert, because I found it always works better, right? You have your in-house person who can lead what needs to happen, can share all that in marketing insight from the other pieces that are going on and help with the execution pieces of it. And in that model, your agency partner really just becomes your strategist, your person that's there to tell you what's happening, tell you what's going on, counsel you to make changes or consider new things, push you in new ways that if you're in the trenches day to day, it's not always easy to see those things. So that's a good model, is having an agency partner who can be your strategist and your in-house person that can, oversee implementation and execution.
Awesome.